Hey, I'm David Lawson, and Happy New Year. I realize this is the first man cave of 2021. And if you're like me, you are glad to get near that calendar and flip it from 2020 to 2021. This last year was absolutely crazy. None of us saw it coming. Um, in my world, it was a gray and dark and challenging place. But at the same time, I saw God's hand at work. Just some of the things that we faced. Remember COVID. Obviously, we're still wrestling with that. Calvary's on the way, but we still have a little ways to go. We're going to get through that. But 2021, as if COVID wasn't bad enough, murder hornets came into the United States. What is that? Murder hornets? That sounds like a sci-fi movie that's terrifying. Did you know there were 7 new species of spiders they found in 2020, I'm sorry. 7 new species. I hate spiders. And they got 7 brand new species they found that we didn't know anything about. 5 new species of snakes. 5. One of them in a place that I go in the ministry that I'm with, highly poisonous. So not only did they find new snakes, they found a new snake that's highly poisonous. This is a terrifying world. 2020. I am glad to step past 2020. Although, as I said a moment ago, we really saw God's hand at work. Now, I realize when I say that it may sound hard to believe, because I know that we get so focused on the negative that sometimes we miss seeing God in the big picture. California, as much as was wrong with the wildfires and COVID and the lockdowns, there was a huge revival that we heard almost nothing about. Thousands were baptized out in the Pacific Ocean. As a matter of fact, the story was so big that the LA Times carried it. They had to send somebody out and write an op-ed on it. LA Times, not exactly people known to carry conservative evangelical stories. Thousands were being baptized, and even bigger than the moment of the baptism was the fact that there were dozens of churches working together to make it happen. Who knew? In the middle of the darkness, the light was shining really, really bright. I love that. I love that. Hey, I want to take just a few minutes. And you know what? Let me share this. I'll share it carefully. I work with a mission organization, and we go into some places where Christianity is not welcome. And in one place in particular, where I've been a number of times, and the pastors I work with and pastors I've trained have been beaten and viciously beaten. Many of them have had family members killed. Some of them have a price on their head, not dead or alive, just dead. There are elements in that society that will pay money to have these pastors killed. In one particular area right there where the persecution is horrible, we've got 180 people waiting to be baptized. Now, I don't know what happened, but it was COVID related. Because of what God unleashed on this planet. God is at work, and while we fear and shake and tremble, oh my, what if I get it? He is accomplishing his purpose. And somewhere in that, he brought 180 people to himself. God is at work. Don't lose sight of that. Hey, since it's a new year, I was tasked with trying to frame New Year's, old year, new year in kind of a biblical perspective. And as I was praying about that, I had one passage that came to mind, Exodus chapter 12. So I'm going to read some of the verses from Exodus 12, but since this is recorded and not live, feel free to hit pause, get your Bible, cup of coffee, something to make notes with, and come back and hit play again. I'm going to read some of the passages from Exodus chapter 12. Let me scroll up to it. Now, before I read it, let me give you the context. The Israelites, the Jews, the descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, or his new name Israel, are in captivity, slaves in Egypt. They've been there 400 years. Now they are being brutally oppressed by one of the pharaohs. And God sent Moses to set them free. Now, there will be a total of 10 plagues that land on Egypt before the children of Israel are set free. And I don't want you to get the idea that I hear sometimes that, well, man, God had to send 10 plagues to get Pharaoh to let him go. Not exactly. God was never dependent on Pharaoh to agree to letting the children of Israel go. God sent the plagues so that Moses would know that he is God, so that the children of Israel would know that God is God and beside him there is no other. He sent the plagues so that Egypt would know that he is God. He sent the plagues so that the whole world would know he is God. He didn't need Pharaoh's permission to set the children free. As a matter of fact, when you get out of Exodus and you're in the book of Joshua and the spies go into the land, into Jericho, to kind of spy it out, not the original 12, but just the 2 that go into Jericho. What they hear from Rahab, the harlot in Jericho, is, this is 40 years after the Exodus. What they hear from her is, we heard what your God did to the Egyptians. They were terrified because God sent these plagues on Egypt and the whole world found out. Now, when we get into Exodus, this plague, chapter 12, we're about to face the very last plague. This is going to be the death of the firstborn of everyone in Egypt. And immediately following this plague, immediately the next morning, the slaves are going free. That's the context. So with that in mind, this is what God says to Moses and Aaron in Exodus chapter 12. I'll start in verse 1. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their father's households, a lamb for a household. Now let me stop there. This month shall be the beginning of a brand new year for you. Don't miss that. Beginning of a brand new year. Now their year has always begun in the fall. The Egyptian calendar starts in the fall. But it's like God is saying, I set the calendar. Not the Egyptians, not man, not the seasons. By the way, God set the seasons, but what he said is, I set the calendar. And for you, you need to understand that I am doing something new. This, now, today, is a brand new month. It should be the beginning of every single year from now on. You start here. Hang on to that. Now, skipping down to verse 5. He describes the lamb that he was just talking about. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male, a year old. And you may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the house in which they eat it. And they shall eat the flesh that night, roasted with fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. So then he describes what's going to happen. Now, this is the first month of the year. This is, you could compare it to our January. And he's saying, on this first month, you need to get ready because you're going to have a special, incredible holiday that is a moment of remembrance for what I'm about to do. You're going to take one lamb per family. We call it the Passover. You're going to kill the lamb, roast it, and eat it that night. And you'll put blood on the doorpost of your house and over it. Are you with me? Okay, now, skip down to verse 12. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all of the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, And watch. I will pass over you, and no plague shall befall you to destroy you. Then, when I strike the land of Egypt, this day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations, as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. God said, I set the calendar. Matter of fact, you could write that down. Make that a note. God sets the calendar. We sometimes get the idea that we set the calendar, or that we make our own appointments and decisions, and we make our own reminders. In the grand scheme of things, that's just a weak view of God. God sets the calendar. And in the big scheme of things, God's scheme of things, he determines what will and will not happen. So for the children of Israel, he said, now you've seen me send 9 plagues on Egypt, and I'm about to send the last one. I set the plagues. Now you will take this month, and this will be the first month of the year, because I'm doing something brand new. And every year for the rest of time, I almost said eternity, but I don't think that's true. For the rest of time, you will stop at the beginning of the year, and you will remember what I've done. They call it the Passover. When they put the blood over the doorpost of the house, the death angel passed over that house. Now hang on. And he says, this shall be for you a memorial day, and you will keep it throughout all your generations. Now, we're not exactly sure what the date of the Exodus was. I tend to be on the conservative side, so almost 1,500 years before Christ. So approximately 3,500 years ago, this happened. And for 3,500 years, the Jewish people have been keeping this memorial because they know this reminds me of what God did. This reminds me that God set me free. Now, a couple of 3 things to write down. I want to hit you with a couple of quick notes. I said that God sets the calendar because God started over with them right there. This is not just some day. This is a brand new start. Now, honestly, when I got saved, I was an alcoholic. So for me, New Year's after I got saved was just another day. I mean, what was the point? I'm not drinking, I'm not getting drunk, I'm not out partying. So one more sunrise, one more sunset. God expects more of us than that. He set the calendar. He established a new year. Now, we operate on a slightly different rotation. Our new year starts in January, not in the spring. But the idea, I think, is the same. Once a year, at the beginning, I want you to stop, and I want you to remember what I have done. That's what God is saying. I want you to remember what I've done. I set you free from captivity. It's almost like he's saying, David, you that are watching at Man Cave, I set you free. I set you free and declared judgment on the power of this world. I did it at the cross. And when you gave your life to Jesus Christ, you were set free. And once a year, it would be great to just stop and remember what God has done. What has God done? He took out that heart of stone. He gave me a heart of flesh. He wrote his laws upon it. In me, old things have passed away. All that junk is gone, and I am a brand new creation. Now, some people that knew me before I was saved would say, well, you're an alcoholic. No, I was an alcoholic. I'm a child of the King. You were a liar, a thief, adulterer. You were immoral. Yes, I was. I was. Now, old things have passed away. I'm a brand new creation in Jesus Christ. I'm indwelled with the presence of the Holy One of Israel. First of the year, what should I do? January 1. It's not just one more day. Stop and remember what God has done. Number 2, I need you to remember that it's God that sets the appointment. This that I'm suggesting is not a suggestion. It's not just oh, that'd be a good idea. This is what God did with the children of Israel. I think it'd be an excellent model for us. I think it's what we should do. Remember, God said this is what's going to happen. He set the appointment every year, first of the year. And he set the reminder. We always are supposed to be remembering. This is what he did. How do I frame last year? I will tell you that there were some points where I didn't see God at work. But when I stopped and prayed and sought the face of God, what I saw was God was at work. God was at work bringing people into the kingdom. We saw in the area that I work internationally, we saw villages open up that would never let us in before. We saw churches being built in places where we'd never had churches. We saw tribes that had never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ hear the gospel for the first time and embrace truth. Here in the United States, we saw revival all across the United States. We saw revival in California. Thousands baptized in Huntington Beach area, up and down the coast, people in the water being baptized, sometimes baptizing the one behind them. Wow, what is God up to? I will tell you what he's up to. He's up to the same thing he's always been up to. We panic over events and circumstances. God doesn't panic over anything. He is at work to accomplish his purpose. So, 3 things. Hang on. Just remember these. Number 1, beginning of the year, I remember what God has done last year. Number 2, this is important. I refocus my heart and my mind on God. I reset. So the first thing I do is remember, write that down. New year. How do I start a new year? I remember what God has done. I reset. I stop and I back up and I say, wow, God set me free. I'm going to reset right here, right now. It's kind of a do-over. This next year is a brand new thing in front of me. I remember what he did. I reset to get ready for what he's going to do. And then I rest in what God will do this year. Rest in it. Relax and rest in what God is going to do this year. We saw God work in 2020. Are we going to see God work in 2021? It really depends whether or not you're watching. You see, God is always at work. He's never stopped working. Are you focused? Are you watching for God to work? Ask God to open the eyes of your heart to see his hand at work in a world where we know that he's working. That's what I wanted to tell you about the new year. Listen, this is the perfect time. Today, right now, where you are, turn off the video, stop for a minute, and in the silence, remember what God has done. He saved you. Refocus, reset right now. Lord, this is a brand new year in front of me. I want to see your hands at work. Rest in that. And then watch. What's God going to do? He's going to do the same thing he did last year. He's going to bring people into the kingdom. And if you pursue him with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind, he might just use you. He will use you to bring people into the kingdom. Listen, Happy New Year. David Lawson, I love you guys. I wish that we could be doing this in person, and someday soon we will. Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you. And this year, watch for his hands at work.